The Roman Empire was one of the most impressive and extensive empires in world history. However, this glorious empire was entirely built upon the system of slavery. Rome's victories, territorial gains, and prosperity rose on the shoulders of millions of chained slaves. One of these slaves was Spartacus, who would lead history's greatest slave revolt against the Roman Empire. Before being enslaved, Spartacus was a Thracian soldier serving in the Roman army. One day, when the Roman Empire ordered him to attack his own people, he refused to obey his commander. He fled, was captured, and enslaved. He was then sold to a cruel man named Lentulus Batiatus, who ran a gladiator training school in Capua. When he joined the school, everyone could tell he was different. He fought skillfully in the trainings, impressing both the gladiators and the instructors. Soon he became a leader in the eyes of the other slaves and gained fame throughout Capua. His fame even reached Rome. Batiatus, known for the success of his gladiators, one day received an invitation from a fight event in Rome. He would select his best gladiators and send them to fight in front of the public. For Spartacus and the others, this meant death, because there was no mercy for gladiators who lost in Roman spectacles. The constant thought of escape had long been on Spartacus's mind, and this became the final straw. Together with his close friends Circus, Onomaus, Crixus, and Gannicus, he prepared an escape plan. Their goal was to break their chains before stepping into the arena in Rome. In the summer of 73 BC, on a summer night, the plan was put into action. Initially, about 200 gladiators were expected to participate in the revolt. However, the plan had been leaked, and the guards were on high alert. Still, around 70 gladiators remained loyal to the plan. With only kitchen knives, sticks, and stones in hand, they took action. The guards were eliminated one by one. The gladiators seized the armory and armed themselves with swords before leaving Capua. The escape plan was successful, and the revolt officially began. Spartacus and his friends took refuge in the slopes of Mount Vesuvius to avoid being easily found. This area in southern Italy was surrounded by olive groves and rocky terrain, forming a natural fortress. Initially, they were only 70 people. However, as news of the revolt spread throughout Capua and the surrounding area, runaway slaves flocked to the mountain. Soon, the rebels numbered in the thousands. The Roman authorities initially did not take the news of the gladiator schools seriously. The matter in the Senate was considered merely a simple slave revolt, expected to last 3, at most 5, days. Therefore, the first commander assigned was an inexperienced nobleman. Gaius Claudius Glaber was given an army of 3,000. However, this force consisted of newly trained, ordinary soldiers. Some were even volunteers. Glaber's mission was simple: to besiege Spartacus and his men at the top of Mount Vesuvius, starve them, and capture them. Mount Vesuvius was high and steep. Glaber held the only exit path. However, Spartacus and his men circled behind Glaber's camp and launched a sudden assault. Panic broke out in the Roman ranks. Glaber's unprepared army was obliterated before they could understand what was happening. Swords tore through Roman armor, and the gladiators' dream of freedom grew stronger with every strike. The destruction of Glaber's army was a humiliation for Rome. The revolt had ceased to be just a gladiator uprising and became a direct challenge to Roman authority. After the victory at Vesuvius was known, slaves across Rome began breaking their chains and joining Spartacus. His army grew daily. The numbers first reached 5,000, then 10,000, then 30,000. However, most of these people had never held a sword or known what war was. Spartacus, along with his brilliant commander Circus, established military order. He banned looting and brought discipline to the slave army. The Roman Empire was now facing not a minor revolt, but a popular movement spreading across Italy. The Senate could not afford a second humiliation. They assembled a new army under the command of their prominent consuls, Publius Varinius and Lucius Clissus, and sent them against the rebels. Spartacus, learning this, split his army into small groups to ambush the Roman forces. Cassinius's army was completely destroyed in a sudden night assault near the campaign area. Following this, Verinius's troops were also trapped on a narrow forest road and annihilated. Serious panic began in the Senate. Rural areas of Rome were burning, roads were blocked, and trade was disrupted. Spartacus and his army captured many cities, including Beneventum, Nola, Nuceria, Metapontum, and Turi. Moreover, the slaves in these cities joined him, and within a year the size of the slave army reached 80,000. This was nearly one-third of the Roman army. Despite holding this power, Spartacus's goal was never to conquer Rome. His objective was to cross the Alps and return to his homeland in Thrace to be free. However, not everyone around him agreed. Some still sought loot, and others wanted revenge on Rome. One of the dissenters was Spartacus's companion, the Gallic warrior Sircus. Sircus wanted to strike at the heart of the empire, capture the city, and force Rome to kneel. Discussions dragged on. Agreement could not be reached. Eventually, the army was split. Spartacus moved north with the main force of around 50,000, while Sircus remained in the south with 30,000 warriors. This division was an opportunity Rome could not miss. They immediately acted. A 40,000-strong Roman army composed of experienced and elite soldiers under the famous politician and general Lucius Gellius advanced south towards Sircus. Near Mount Gargano, the two sides faced each other. Sircus and his men were exhausted from long marches. Nevertheless, the slave army launched the first attack. However, each assault was met as if hitting a wall. Sircus's men gradually dwindled against the professional Romans. Ultimately, after Sircus was killed, the leaderless slave army was completely destroyed. After the victory, Gellius and his forces advanced north to confront Spartacus. Meanwhile, another Roman army under Clodianus moved north to prevent Spartacus from reaching the Alps. Rome's goal was to trap the rebels between two armies and annihilate them. Spartacus ambushed Clodianus's army near Pistoia in a valley of the Apennine Mountains. After fierce fighting, the Roman army was mostly destroyed. The surviving soldiers and Clodianus were forced to flee. After this victory, Spartacus confronted Gellius near Ambria and defeated them. Gellius fled the battlefield like Clodianus before him. The two defeated generals regrouped with their few remaining soldiers and advanced once again against Spartacus. However, in the battle near Picenum, the Romans were once more defeated. The Senate, now impatient, dismissed both generals. In their eyes, only one man could erase this humiliation: Marcus Linnæus Crassus. Rome's wealthiest man, a politically ruthless and historically brutal general. A new army of 50,000 was quickly assembled under Marcus Crassus's command. Moving north, Crassus positioned his forces south of the Alps. Spartacus attempted to bypass Crassus's forces but failed. Losing around 6,000 men, he retreated south. His army was now exhausted, making Sicily his next objective. Sicily was Rome's granary and had witnessed multiple slave revolts before. If he could reach it, he might ignite a new wave of rebellion, potentially dragging Rome into years of civil war. Spartacus arranged with pirates to transport his men across. At Reggio Calabria, they waited for the pirates. However, the pirates took the gold and abandoned Spartacus. Realizing this too late, Spartacus and his army were trapped in southern Italy. Meanwhile, Crassus established an extraordinary defense line to besiege Spartacus. A 60-kilometer-wide defense line was built at the narrowest point of the peninsula, reinforced with ditches and walls. Additionally, the Roman navy joined, surrounding the rebels from the sea. Spartacus and his army were now isolated both by land and sea. Hunger began to spread, and the army's morale deteriorated. Spartacus and his men managed to break through the defense line with a sudden night assault. They fled north, pursued by Crassus. Moreover, the famous Roman general Pompey and Macedonian consul Lucullus arrived with their forces to aid Crassus. Spartacus aimed to cross to the opposite coast. However, upon arrival, he saw Lucullus had landed, ruining the plan. As a last resort, he sent a letter to Crassus seeking a truce, but Crassus refused. Spartacus and his army then moved to the northern campaign area. Pompey and his forces blocked their path. The year was 71 BC near the Salarius River. Spartacus and Crassus faced each other once more. The slave army numbered around 50,000. Although their morale was low and resources were depleted, they were still free. Spartacus addressed his men one last time. "Today we either rise like the free or die like the free. Rome enslaved us, but we shall determine our own fate." Following this speech, Spartacus and his men charged the Roman army. The battle was fierce. Every strike of the slave army met strong resistance. As casualties mounted, Spartacus drew his sword and charged Crassus's headquarters. He killed 2 high-ranking commanders but could not reach Crassus. Surrounded by Roman soldiers, he fought heroically but couldn't break free. With his death, the slave army quickly disbanded. About 50,000 slaves died in this battle, while the Roman army lost 12,000. General Crassus displayed 6,000 rebel corpses along the road to Rome as a warning. Rome had won again. Yet the revolt sparked by Spartacus left an indelible mark. Moreover, Spartacus's body was never found for months, adding to his legend. Some believe he survived the battle and disappeared without a trace. Although Rome tried to erase his name, Spartacus was immortalized in history as a hero of freedom.